Yeah, that defeat, England's largest in terms of runs since 1934, India's biggest of all time. The fourth test begins on Friday live on talkSPORT 2 and the talkSPORT YouTube cricket channel, where an India win would preserve an unbeaten home record that stretches back to 2012. Joining us now to look back on a bad few days for England, a man who was part of the last England side to win in India. Very good morning to the former England spin bowler, Graeme Swann. Morning, Graeme.
Graeme.
Morning, chaps. How are we doing?
Yeah, very good. Look, before we get down to the serious business, have you got an Alan Brazil impression?
You know what? I've not really got on. Mine's very generic. Hey, joining me this morning, Ali McCoy. I could do a good Bumble. He's a super ball. He's a nice guy, but not Brazil. Not Brazil.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Look, I tell you what, Swanee, are we being a bit overreactive to this test defeat? I mean, this is India in India, and it seems to me we've got pretty short memories of what a brilliant series, for instance, the Ashes series was, and the first test.
Well, Jeff, we are English, and so yes, we are absolutely overreactive to this. It's our nature. I'm a huge believer in the way England played. Call it baseball, call it proactive cricket, whatever you want to call it. Over the last couple of years, we've won more Test matches than we have for donkeys. And when it doesn't go right, it does look like an absolute car crash. I'll give you that. Yesterday's was a very messy end to a Test match. But I'm with Ben Stokes when he says, look, this is our brand of cricket. It's not always going to work, but we're going to stick to our guns. So I think if we're going to accept things like that brilliant Ben Duckett 100 on day two, that, 10 years ago, it'd have been kicked out and chased out of the country for batting like that. But if we're going to accept that, we've got to accept that it's going to go, bellies up every now and again. Joe Root might get caught out like that and we get soundly beaten. So, yeah, I think we've overreacted badly.
I was reading today, Graeme, Jonathan Agnew's column in the paper, and he was talking about that it's our England at a crossroads, and I thought that was a bit harsh, considering that England have obviously played New Zealand, South Africa, Pakistan, have been fantastic in them Test matches. And is that a bit too harsh, too quick?
Massively. I mean, you got to remember that, Agars, I love Agars' piece. I've worked with him for a long time, but he is part of the old school sort of established media who, deep down, they don't really like baseball. They'd rather it be an old-fashioned 5-day Test matches and quicker over 8 and things like that. So I think it doesn't surprise me that Agars says that, and a lot of people will agree. My dad will be sat at home spitting his coffee at the TV at the way that England lost so heavily because he wants to go back to, Jeffrey Boycott batting for a day and a half. But I think the world's moved on, Test cricket's moved on, and England have been incredible for the last 2 or 3 years to watch. They've reinvigorated Test cricket in England. I mean, my little boy likes Test cricket now. 4 or 5 years ago, hated it.
Yeah.
He loves watching it now. I think we've got to accept that. It doesn't always go well. It's like football. It's like passing it out from the back. Every now and again you mess up and you're 1-0 down in 37 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's been brilliant. As you say, it's revolutionised Test cricket as well, Graeme. But when I look at somebody like Joe Root, you just wonder whether things need to be modified a little. I mean, he scored 77 in 6 innings, top scored 29, and he's played some very un-Joe Root-like shots. Do you need even in baseball, do you need somebody to anchor that innings?
Well, yeah, you do need someone to anchor the innings. I think Ben Stokes summed it up perfectly when he was asked. He said, look, this guy's got 12,000 runs, 30 Test hundreds. We're not going to tell him how to bat. It did look bad when he got out because of that shot, but the same shot, he played that a couple of years ago against New Zealand, against Australia, and everyone was lauding it, saying this is incredible. The best player in the world has now adapted his game. I think the biggest issue for Joe and for England at the minute is his lack of runs in general, because he's such a good player. He is our best player, and we need him to score hundreds. I don't care how he scores those hundreds, to be honest. I don't care if he plays that shot time after time. It's just, I think he was more annoyed at himself after he got out, the execution of the shot rather than the shot itself. So, I'm not going to buy into, everyone needs to do it apart from Joe sort of thing. He's our best player. So I'm with Ben Stokes. Let him bat how he bats.
I was going to say, Graeme, just on that. So, what do you expect? Just the same again, and hopefully just a different outcome and more similar to what happened in the first test.
Yeah, well, this will sound a bit weird, but I actually think England's issue in this test came after the second day. That second evening, Ben Duckett was unbelievable. He was so aggressive, so proactive. The next morning, I think England went into their shell a bit because of the way Joe maybe got out. everyone else followed him and went into their shell. They weren't as attacking. I think that's the issue. So if anything, I'm calling for him to double down on Bazball, on the aggressive approach. I think the way to beat India in India is to bat like Jaswal did against England, be ultra aggressive and really take it to the spinners, especially not allow them to bowl, not allow them to settle in. So whether England will do that, I think they probably will, to be honest. I think they'll look at, especially the last day of the game, and think, we can't do that again. That was too defensive. We allowed them to bowl. We allowed them to bowl us out. So I wouldn't be surprised if they come out even harder in the next game.
Yeah, and by the way, Jaswal, he looks some player, doesn't he? But look, just finally, Swanee, talk here about Ben Stokes maybe bowling in the next test. Is that a sign of desperation? Should he be considering that even?
Do you know what? I didn't think we'd see him bowl at all on this trip, but before the games each day, I'm out here in India and I was watching him warm up and he was bowling. It took me by surprise, but not just off 2 or 3 steps, bowling flat out. If he's fit and he's bowling well and he thinks his knee can stand it, you definitely would bowl him. He's brilliant. I don't think that's a sign of desperation. I think that's the best way to balance your team out here. He's the best all-rounder world cricket has seen since Jack Callis and the best we've had since Ian Botham. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's fit. Knowing Ben, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes and bowls a few.
Yeah, brilliant.
Whether it's medically a good idea is another thing.
I don't think he takes too much notice of that, does he? It's a fantastic series. Whatever anybody says, it's captured the imagination yet again, and that's all down to Bazball. Graeme, thanks very much indeed,
Graeme.
mate.
Thanks, boys. Have a good one.